what if I'm struggling to identify whether or not I have a certain number of covered loans to meet those thresholds? Well, page number 5, letter A says, first off, do you have readily accessible information? If you have readily accessible information, then you need to use that data. So I think a lot of the large CRA reporters, you're going to have this data. You're going to know in actual what your numbers are, so you can determine which tier or which runway or tier you're going to be on, so that you can nail down your mandatory compliance date. If you don't have what they determine to be readily accessible information, Roman numeral 2, bottom of page 5, and what that means is, if you have to go crack open a file to find gross annual revenue, if you have to go and retrieve a scanned image of a file to retrieve or to identify gross annual revenue, in other words, I have to go hunting and fishing for it, then it's not readily accessible. But if I have the field or the code in my system and I can query it, then it would be readily accessible because you're actively collecting that information. If you're actively collecting, but you don't code it, you don't document it a certain way, you'd have to go look in the paperwork to identify it, that's not readily accessible. So then what are we to do? Well, if you go to page number 6, letter B at the top, says that the regulation is going to give you reasonable methods to estimate your numbers for determining your applicable path, your path to the mandatory compliance date. So one of the options, letter B1, and I think there are many out there that are looking at this one and looking to use it, is that you're going to look at fourth quarter 2023 data. What that means, though, is that you would have to be preparing already to start in the fourth quarter collecting gross annual revenue for your originations and making certain that you can determine what is a quote unquote covered origination versus something that's not a covered origination, because you can only include those that are otherwise covered. That's what you're here to learn about during this series. So we'll get you that information in the coming chapters, but you can't just say, well, all our commercial loans, and these are the ones that have gross annual revenue, because some of them are otherwise exempt. And so you're gonna have to know more than just taking a commercial loan and tying a gross annual revenue number to it. That said, this is another place where my teammate Diane came up with a great idea. You know, if we have to use fourth quarter 2023 data to determine whether or not we're a covered institution or to determine the date, gosh, we'll just have a loan sale in the third quarter so that we have very few originations in the fourth quarter. That's a joke, folks. Hopefully you're getting that. But I suppose it could realistically knock your numbers down. Anyway, estimated based on fourth quarter actual data. And then you could take that fourth quarter data and annualize it for 2023 and also use it as your 2022 numbers, again, to determine your mandatory compliance date. Roman numeral 2, you could assume that every covered credit transaction that you originate was to a small business. Now, what that means is you can disregard gross annual revenue altogether. We're just going to assume that for all of 2023 and all of 2022, anything we made to a small business is a covered transaction. But you still have to know what's not a covered transaction. So yes, you can assume every covered is going to be counted, but you have to know what's exempt. That's the difficult part of this that we'll share with you a little bit later on today. You might want to pick up your pens here. Next to Roman numeral 2, write down C page 25 through 27. That's where the exclusions are. We're going to get there a little bit later today, but you cannot include those. You can't include them in your counted originations. You have to back those out. And then the third is they give you this other reasonable means to get there. Here's the thing, you've got to be able to document it and back it up. One of the questions we've been asked often as it relates to these dates is, well, you know, do we have to prove it? I think it's an examiner is going to want to know how you determined what your mandatory compliance date was. But let's say you know you're over 100 and you can show that there's no, you know, even if you took every loan that we made, we're less than 500. I think you can reasonably say, all right, yeah, we know we're covered. We're over 100. We know, you know, the total loans we made less than 500. So we know we're in this category. So maybe you have to spend less time on it. But I do think you should document that story so that if you ever asked, how do you determine your compliance date, you're able to present that to auditors and examiners alike.